What's going on, everybody? Welcome back in to the Take the North podcast. I am Dan Wiederer, pleased to be joined today by a very special guest. It's my colleague at The Athletic. It's pinch hitter extraordinaire. It's Kevin Fishbain. Kev, how's it going?
Am I the Lenny Harris of this podcast? Wasn't he the all-time pinch hitter guy?
I do recall some Lenny Harris in my day. I'd have to make a good list of pinch hitters that could come in the clutch and make something happen. Would you rather be a pinch hitter or a pinch runner?
Um, oh, probably pinch runner. Get me on the bases. That I could skip the whole at bat part.
Oh, there you
Just
go.
run.
There you go. And then
Yeah.
just try to use your speed and make something happen. The Chicago Bears didn't make enough happen Sunday night, Kevin, at Soldier Field. Their season ended 20-17, overtime loss to the Rams. And so we're in the process here for the rest of this week of kind of closing things up, gaining closure on what the season was, what it wasn't, what the future is, what it isn't. Trying to make sense of a game that you could probably talk about for the entire week if you weren't trying to, get on to the next order of business, which the Bears are going to have to do in a hurry. You were there with me on Monday in the locker closeout day at Haugh. I've described the mood there as heavy. It just felt like a team that, with all the pride that they felt in the season that they put together, understood that the opportunity that was there for them slipped past, and you can't get that back. And so I'm just curious, what was your lasting takeaway of being in that room for the last time this season, talking to those players that were still in there and getting a feel for their pulse on things?
Yeah, it's always somber on that day. It's always this kind of weird last day of school, last day of camp feel. But this year, kind of as you said, it was a little bit more so because these guys know how close they were. I mean, because of the way that game unfolded, we can sit here all week and go, if Roma Dunze catches that pass in the first drive, if they have better defense on third down here and there, if they get the 1 yard from Kalamanungai, if that 4th and 2 touch, like all these different things, you go on and on. And those guys know it. And those guys know how close they were. And I think they had so much fun this season.
Yeah.
That they understand that it's just you can't replicate that, and it's going to be a different locker room, and it's going to be a different schedule, and it's going to be a different team next year. So I think all of those things, made it for us, for all the open or locker cleanouts that you and I have covered, it was a unique situation. I think guys are hopeful about what this can be. They know they got the coach. They feel pretty darn good about the quarterback. But yeah, they're sitting there now being like, damn, that could be us getting ready to play Seattle.
I'll come back to this in a minute, and we do have some sound from Monday and a little bit from Sunday as well to kind of help drive our conversation. But Tyson Bagent, as you know, one of my favorites in that locker room, a philosopher extraordinaire, said to me on Monday that every season's like a fingerprint. He said they're all different, and so you can't just expect the next year to go as this one did. There's a lot of things that this team believes that is established within the 2025 season under the direction of Ben Johnson, under the growth of Caleb Williams. But you just never know what's waiting for you in the next NFL season. And so every season is like a fingerprint. The Bears are going to have to find a way to make that next fingerprint be a little bit more impactful for what they're trying to accomplish. And it's a really, really tough realization to make. I'll come back to that in a little bit, because I do think the fact that they made this realization early so quickly after the loss is beneficial to them as they try to put their best feet forward for what's ahead of them next season. But you wrote a great piece on Tuesday morning at The Athletic, unpacking some of the things within Sunday night's game that we didn't get to because of all the grand, significant things that we had to get to first on Sunday night. And so I wanted to steer down a couple paths of game-related topics that we just really haven't had a full chance to fully unpack. And I'm going to start with the one that Chicago can't stop talking about. It's the final offensive play of the season. It's Caleb Williams' third interception of the game. It's DJ Moore's route. It's everything that happened to put the football back in the hands of Matthew Stafford for the Rams' game-winning drive. And I feel like, as you and I sit here on Tuesday afternoon trying to get to the bottom of this, we still don't have clarity on the fullest extent of what was happening, what should have happened, what didn't happen, what could have happened. I'm just curious your perspective on it as we wait to learn a little bit more from people that matter.
Yeah, you said it to me yesterday. You're like, if one thing goes different there, they're in a field goal range, and we're having such different conversations. I mean, this play should not be discounted. It should not be, there's no way to overanalyze it. I've been coming at it, Dan, from a little bit of a outside DJ Moore perspective. Like, I think the DJ conversation needs to be had, but if I can go another way, Caleb Williams had so much time in the pocket. It was like one of
Sure.
his cleanest pockets all night. So you find yourself in this hindsight of like, Kamanungai was in the right flat. There was a ton of space to the left. Like, this coach and quarterback believe in big play hunting, and I like that, and they should. This is the way the NFL is. You should be going. Ben Johnson loves the explosives. I mean, shoot, the Rams tried that before they kicked the game-winning field goal. But you just wondered if in that spot where they were at the field, if just instead of going for that shot where you need to be on the same page for it to happen, if there were just some better options. I think we can talk about DJ. I think that the DJ Moore route and why that didn't connect is number one. But for me, number two is just wondering, like, whether it was a different play call or a different decision. Like, you just hate to see the game end on taking that kind of shot when it wasn't necessary in that spot.
I feel you, and I'm curious to get Ben Johnson's midweek answer on what he learned watching that play back. Because when we talked to him post game Sunday night, he had yet to watch the play. He was trying to give a recap from his sideline view, and obviously he can't see everything from that lens that you can see when you put on the all 22 and can diagnose leverages and check down options and who's doing what on the play as it was designed and how it unfolded. What you said a bit ago marries up with what I was emphasizing on Monday. It's a history-changing play. And that sounds dramatic, and it sounds like, oh man, you're putting a lot of weight on this one play. It's history-changing because if they complete a pass there, and Caleb and DJ are on the same page, and they're able to connect there, now all of a sudden you're in range for Cairo Santos to kick you onto the NFC Championship game. And the rest of this week, we're talking about the heroic throw that Caleb Williams made to send that game into overtime. We're talking about his ability to use the one possession that he had in overtime to push the Bears on to the next round of the playoffs. And it's a reminder on so many levels of just how microscopic details result in history-changing consequences, right? And so that's why it's worth exploring this further. Obviously, I'll take people behind the curtain for a little while about how obsessed I was for a little bit about the last play that was run in San Francisco, in Santa Clara against the 49ers in the regular season, when the Bears on their final play of the game with the chance to make some magic happen, didn't even get the right play in or off. And you're like, man, that was a problem, because not only did it wasn't that the play failed, it was that the process failed. And you're like, man, these are the moments, right? Like, these are the moments that are going to define seasons, define legacies. And you have to find a way to be razor sharp in those moments. And this is an example on Sunday against the Rams where they weren't razor sharp. It led to a turnover. It led to a loss. It led to us being in a locker room yesterday where guys are stuffing hefty bags with their belongings rather than talking about what they think they can get done against the Seahawks. And it is just such a hard reminder of what this league is and what it demands of the best teams in it.
And our listeners probably don't even know, Dan, you're still talking about the last play in Baltimore. What happened there?
Actually, I'm not. I don't remember that. What happened there? What was the last play?
Didn't they have like 4 shots from the 1 yard line?
They got down. Yeah, they were down 2 scores. Yeah, but it did get. It was. I mean, that wasn't a moment where they were discombobulated when you shouldn't be discombobulated. And yeah, you're right.
I mean, you spin it forward for next year, and it's like, okay, these guys have a lot of confidence. They have a lot of belief. You can't take that away from them. You've got a quarterback who can rally you back and make crazy plays. But one thing I've been thinking about a lot this week, Dan, is next step for the offense is capitalizing, putting teams away, being smoother. There's a big difference. You wrote about the fourth down a lot last week, and then obviously came into play in a big way this week. Ben Johnson's offense on fourth down, a lot different in Detroit than it was in his first year in Chicago. Ben Johnson's offense in goal-to-go situations a lot different in Detroit than it has been in Chicago. So you look at those situational things, and then he's going to have to kind of how do you prepare for an overtime opportunity to kick a field goal to win, to go to the conference championship? You don't have those things drawn up. But I bring up the goal to go and the red zone and the fourth down because it's situational football. It's making sure you do what you can to win, so you don't have to rely on Caleb putting on that cape and doing things that you shouldn't always be able to rely on. And that's a play where it's like, I imagine, knowing Ben Johnson, his attention to detail and his competitiveness, he's going to be hyper analyzing that and said, hey, if we're in a game next year and we're in this situation, what are we going to do differently? Or if we're in a game next year and we call this play, what do I want to happen differently?
You've got one of the best offensive minds in the sport in your building drawing up your plays. And to your point, there's high leverage moments down by the goal line and on fourth down where you want to see what you've drawn up and what you've designed to attack a defense just run a lot crisper and smoother. The pass to tie the game, clearly off script, right? Like, you've got a quarterback, you say put his cape on. I mean, it was comical to watch Caleb Williams with his back turned to the play, sprinting the wrong direction just to create space, and then he whips around and at the moment he's like 15 yards behind the line of scrimmage. You're like, okay, season over. Then he gets 20, 25, and you're like, what is happening? Then the ball's in the air, and the next thing you know, Cole Kmet's got it in the end zone, and the place is erupting, and it's so mind-bending to realize that you have a guy like this now on your side. If you can marry that guy up with the head coach who's so good at scheming things up, and you can just kind of meet in the middle a little bit somewhere on a more regular basis. Now you've unlocked a door to a world that we can't even imagine. And I'm sure you feel similarly about just the wildness of the play that we'll never stop talking about, but albeit in a loss that ended their season.
Yeah, it's one of those things that not many guys on the planet can do that. Not many guys on the planet could be 2 feet in the air. It seemed like when he threw that ball, fading away, two guys in his face, and he throws it to a spot where his guy is. You talk. What is it? The NFL official account essentially was like Caleb Williams had like the 4 best throws all season. You think about the overtime game winner to DJ through the win, the 4th and 8 to Rome Odunze to beat the Packers last week, the touchdown throw to DJ Moore in Cleveland against Cleveland. Yep. It's crazy, like the things that he does. And yeah, I mean, you think about the quarterbacks who've done this stuff to the Bears. You want to go back at the Wayback Machine. Like there's a little Brett Favre-ness to it, and Rodgers and the things those guys were able to do with their arm talent that was just so rare. And yeah, the Bears have a guy, and now it's harness that, and how do we continue to take advantage of this and make other things easier. I actually even think back to the touchdown of DJ Moore on 4th and goal. What was that? That was the second quarter to tie the game.
Yeah.
And it wasn't the easiest play in the world. DJ had to make a pretty good catch. But like things like that, you did still see better than we were used to when they get in there. Just, it has to continue to be crisper. But that was an example of like, coach schemes guys open, offensive line creates the time, quarterback makes a throw, receiver makes a catch, all the basics. Like they now have the people they can do that with. I mean, do you remember whenever the Packers had like a 4th and goal from the 2 against the Bears? It was just the easiest.
I mean, it was usually just Rodgers to Devontae, forever.
Little pylon route. Just yeah.
I remember one time. It's vivid in my brain. It's a Sunday night game up in Lambeau Field, and it was Jalen 1-on-1 against Devontae, and it was really just Rodgers saying, is he gonna try to win outside, or is he gonna try to win inside? It wasn't a matter of whether he was gonna win. It was just like, where's he gonna win, and where am I gonna just bullseye this football? And as a cornerback, it's a helpless feeling. But yeah, to your point.
And Jordy Nelson, I can just remember times that he just pitch and catch with Jordy, and there was a moment like when Luke Getsy was here, and Getsy came from that. Like every once in a while, you saw like a really good play from the 2023 Bears by the goal line. But like again, they have the guy now. They did it so well in Detroit, and now it's time to figure out how they can get that. It's funny, Dan, to like talk about what was one of the best Bears offenses in history in so many different statistical ways, and it can still be so much better next year.
No question. Little rapid fire here on the game. Colston Loveland left the game in the final 2 minutes of regulation, didn't play in overtime, did not play on any of the Bears' final 15 offensive snaps. You and I think, in the chaos of the moment, didn't fully realize that he was not on the field in overtime for the Bears, and didn't know really till the post-game press conference that he had suffered a concussion. You go back and watch his last catch of the game, and his head hits down really hard on that icy turf at Soldier Field. It reminded me a little bit of the Brett Favre concussion that ended his career with just the playing surface and the way the head hit it. And you're like, man, that's no good. But you would have to imagine that final drive in overtime might go a little bit differently if you've got your security blanket and your, current top pass catcher at your services.
Yeah, I mean, we just talked about these plays where you're just asking your guys to win 1-on-1. You put the ball up, and you just know your guy's going to get it, and that's Loveland. That's what he's been for them all year. Certainly the second half of the year. Yeah, I mean, overtime goes differently. Potentially, if he's out there, it's one of those things that as we go through the what ifs, right? Like, and again, Dan, you and I talked on the phone about this morning that like there was a way for the Bears season to end without over analyzing the what ifs.
Yeah.
And it's a testament to them that they didn't just lose by 2 touchdowns to a really good Rams team, that they battled and they played this great game on defense and they came back. But now you're sitting there, you're like, you go through those overtime plays, you're like, yeah, it's 2nd and 8. That's Colson Loveland's out there, and Loveland would probably be the first to tell you that there are probably at least 2 plays he wants back. Not perfect throws,
Sure.
but balls that he usually catches. And a lot of guys just were not. Goes back to that idea of being crisp. It was not the crispest night for the Bears passing game, which understandably in the conditions. But yeah, I mean, Loveland. If you had to rank your top 5 things you're most hopeful about moving forward about this team and what we saw this season, I mean, Loveland might be 2,
Yeah.
Or 3 behind the coach and the quarterback.
Yeah, for sure. And that's a big deal as they try to push this thing in the right direction. 2 more game-oriented things. The 2-point conversion is that they didn't try has been a topic of discussion over the last 48 hours or so. Ben Johnson, I thought, explained it well after the game and saying, look, and you wrote this very well in your piece today at The Athletic, that their short yardage and inside the 5 packages for that game weren't going very well. There's just too many moments where they needed 1 or 2 yards and they couldn't get it. And so after you have this huge explosive moment with the Cole Kmet touchdown catch, you're thinking, all right, do we just keep the pressure on the Rams and take advantage of some momentum surge? Or do we realize that we've struggled in this area? And I think Ben calculated that in his own brain and said, let's just get this game into overtime and we'll take our chances there rather than putting it all on this one play. And yet you hear this outside criticism of, Ben turtled, and Ben wasn't the same guy, in the biggest stages of the game. And it's just nonsense to me, because those on the outside criticizing that have access to the post-game press conference to hear the coach's explanation, to understand what happened in the 3 hours that preceded that. I just wonder where you come down on the whole debate on should they have gone for 2, and because they didn't, does the decision, is it outcome bias that you need to apply to try to figure out what the right call was?
Well, you might remember as they were driving, I kind of said out loud in the press box, like, you go for 2 here? And our good friend Larry Mayer of ChicagoBears.com was ready to throw me out of the press box for considering the possibility of them going for 2, which made me think they should go for 2 if Larry thinks
yeah, for sure.
the extra point. But one of the things about Ben Johnson, because there's also been a lot of conversation about the 4th down stuff. He takes every single moment, as he should, as its own singular moment. It doesn't matter that he would have gone for 2 in Green Bay if they get that touchdown to Cole Kmet, what he does on Sunday night. It doesn't matter if he went for it on this 4th down, but not that 4th down. Every play is individual, and he's got to look at that and said, I mean, Dan, think about how many 2-point plays they tried and failed at early on the previous drive when they had 1st and goal from the 5. Those are all 2-point plays, and they couldn't get any of them in. I will throw. I heard this on another podcast. Not that I listen to any other podcast but this one, but
I was going to say you might have to reapply for.
I was listening to a different podcast, and a pretty popular one where the 2 hosts they like to guess the NFL lines, and they brought up this theory, which is an interesting one. I'll throw it to you, which is, what would the fans of the opposing team want you to do in that moment?
Mm-hmm.
Now, again, this is not necessarily how a coach should think, but I like the theory. If you're a Rams fan in that moment, aren't you taking a little bit of a sigh of relief that they don't go for 2?
Sure, because it gives you new life, right? Like, it gives you a chance to take the steering wheel of the game back.
And the flip side of that, though, I'll bring this up. If the Bears go for 2 and the Rams get the ball with 13 seconds left, they're not taking a knee, obviously. I was even surprised it took a knee in the moment. And I think that you have to factor in the possibility that the way Stafford could throw the football and the way you got Puka Nacua out there, it's not out of the realm of possibility that he makes a 30-yard throw and a 5-yard out, timeout, or they think they only had one timeout left, but and suddenly they're in field goal range. So I think to put a bow on this conversation, Dan, to those who wanted him to go for two, the Bears had the ball at midfield, first and 10 in overtime, with a chance to kick the field goal to win. Like, you can go through every fourth down conversation, you can go every 2-point conversation, play calling, all of that. They had the game. They had the opportunity to win. So all in all, they put themselves in position to win, and they couldn't get it done.
First and 10 at the 50 in overtime in sudden death, right? Like, I mean, like, you would have handed that to people on Sunday morning and said, would you take this? And every single person in the city of Chicago would have signed up for that. Unfortunately, it didn't end that way. One last little conversation, very small, but in your story today, you had a very key statistic about the defensive performance, and that they had, after that opening drive touchdown that the Rams put together, Bears forced punts on 7 of the next 8 possessions. And it was like, I knew they were playing well. I didn't realize in the moment that it was 7 punts and 8 possessions that the Rams had there. And, David Haugh and I, when this podcast first started, used to do a little segment called Flip the Score, where it's like, if we change the result of this game the opposite way, what would be the one thing that we're talking about all week that we're not talking about at all this week? And that would be it. It would be the defensive performance with a group that held Devontae Adams and Puka Nacua to a total of 80 receiving yards, that held Matthew Stafford to, I think it was a 67.8 rating in the game. Like, you see what the Bears defense did on that stage in that game against the league's most productive offense. And you go, man, that's really impressive. It's unfortunate that it's not going to get the acclaim that it deserves, because the season's over and guys packed up their lockers and they're on to Cancun or wherever else they're going.
Yeah. I mean, did you see the Sean McVay, Dennis Allen handshake yet? I think inside.
Yeah.
And McVay's like, you got me all night. I don't know exactly what he said, but he was like, and McVay himself admitted that it wasn't a good game for him. And a lot of that was what Dennis Allen was doing. And to take our listeners into the press box, you sit next to me while I try to maniacally chart who's on the field. And I don't know how your former colleague Brad Biggs does it by hand. And I'm I'm using a spreadsheet, and it's a challenge. And it was never more challenging on defense than Sunday night. The way Dennis Allen, what he was doing sometimes on 2nd and 10, he would sometimes bring out a dime package.
Yeah.
And bring on both CJ Gardner-Johnson and Kyler Gordon, take one linebacker off. Then sometimes he'd keep both linebackers on and go 3 defensive linemen. Sometimes he had Kyler Gordon blitz. He had one play where both Gordon and GJ blitz. He had a play where Andrew Billings dropped into coverage.
Yeah.
He had Brisker had the game of his life, and he's flying over the field. It was a masterpiece by Dennis Allen. And the what ifs, I think there's a 3rd down there at the end that everybody probably wants back, or probably 2 third downs overall. That first drive wasn't great, but yeah, I mean, that was, I think I had the stat in the story that Stafford's had over 100 games in his football career, or his pro football career, with no interceptions. And this was his 2nd worst of those 117 or whatever it was in a game. He had no interceptions. It was his worst accuracy of the season, his 2nd worst passer rating of the season. Like,
most sacks of the season.
Yeah, they had him in fits, and that was the number one concern heading into the game. So spin it forward again, Dan. Was that a little bit of a sign of when Dennis Allen said how excited he was to work with Kyler Gordon? And you finally got, this is probably as healthy as Kyler Gordon was, in terms of playing a full game. Like, just a little tiny glimpse of like the things that he could do with Kyler Gordon, the things that he's capable of as a coordinator, were on display. And I think we can all agree that number one priority in terms of acquiring players is going to be on that side of the football. And I mean, Dennis Allen hasn't been perfect, but I think the lasting impression from him is Bears fans should be pretty grateful that he's calling the plays on that side of the football.
Yeah, and it was a good performance to go out on. I do want to flip the page now, slam the back cover shut on the Rams game, and talk a little bit about emotions about the road ahead for these Bears, and we're going to use some audio to guide us here. And the first person I want to hear from was Cole Kmet, the longtime Bears tight end. He knows a lot about what this city and this organization have been through. He knows what that opportunity was Sunday night. He knows how painful that loss was. And so this was Cole after the game with some perspective on how to view all of this.
Yeah, I understand, but the work we put in is for this year, not for next year. Next year's, when we take our time off here and you reset and the team of what it's going to be next year settles in for itself, it starts all over again, and it's 0-0, and it's going to be twice as hard to get to this point, and you can't take for granted the opportunities you get in this league to get to this chance and to have an opportunity to go to the NFC Championship game, and then who knows from there. But to just think that it's just going to happen again, that's very wishful thinking, very wishful. And we play in a tough division, and I know we won the division, but we also went 2-4 in the division this year, and those teams are going to come back hungry, and it's just that much harder. And so that's why it hurts when you have the opportunity now, and you just come up a little short. It stinks because there's a lot of work that has to be done.
So, Fish, it's just really poignant stuff from Cole because it is a hyper-aware perspective on how hard it was to get to this point this year, how much harder it's going to be to get back to the same point next year. I'll take it one step further to say that when the Bears kicked off on Sunday night, they were looking at a conference championship lineup that included Jarrett Stidham, Drake May, and Sam Darnold. And I don't know that you're ever going to be inside of a bracket where all of the A-list alpha top tier quarterbacks are removed and you've got a chance to go swing in the final four of that. And so I think that factors in a little bit to the picture that the Bears saw and see, but also I think that this just goes back to the conversation of how hard this league is. And I wrote for my athletic piece on Wednesday that the NFL does an amazing job every year of selling hope to 32 franchises. And then in the little fine print, it says, this is really freaking hard to achieve the highest level of success in this league. And I don't think people get that because they're so intoxicated by the hope of this league that you do not realize how freaking hard it is to even do what the Bears did this year, 11 wins, division championship, playoff win, get to the divisional round. And now, oh, by the way, you were 3 wins short of holding up the biggest trophy the sport has to offer.
I mean, this year, all you name the quarterbacks who are in it. All you have to do is look at the quarterbacks who are not to realize what this is like. I mean, just look at what Jaden Daniels and Commanders had to deal with this season after, what happened last year. Look at Ben Johnson's former team and what they dealt with this year. And, shoot, it's hard. It's hard to win, period. It's hard to sustain any kind of winning. One of the biggest reasons Lovie Smith is held in such high regard is like he did something that we're on now the 5th coach since him, and the 4 previous couldn't do it, and the 2 before him didn't do it, which is sustained success. He only went to the playoffs 3 times in 9 seasons,
right?
But in Bears post Ditka history, it's
the glory years.
Incredible achievement. And it was a great achievement, but it's so hard. And I think Ben Johnson, he's talked a little bit about what it was like starting his career in Miami. And that was a team that struggled. And seeing that and being in the same division of the Patriots, I think really shaped him in terms of understanding, appreciating how hard it is. And then for him to be on a great team in Detroit and not get to the Super Bowl, he saw that firsthand. And so he gets it. And, there's veterans on this team like Kevin Byard spoke to it. And here's Cole, who's been, I don't know if you know this about Cole. He grew up a Bears fan. So he's very familiar with this team.
Yeah.
So he
read that in the media guide. Yeah.
He knows how hard it's been, to sustain any kind of success. So I just think that it's a good message for the players to heed now, for them to understand, because one of the things that Cole said, I don't know if it was in that soundbite, but like he said, this work started in April. And it was hard. It was a lot of work.
Yeah. No, right.
These guys need to show up in April and realize we have to work harder now to get to where we need to go. Because that's, so many teams fall off after that great year because they don't have that hunger and that drive and that work ethic. We've seen it here too many times.
That marries up with a part of the conversation I had with Tyson Bagent on Monday in regards to this very topic and how difficult it is. And he says, when you hear a guy like Ben Johnson stand in front of the team and say, all we did wasn't enough. And it's obviously not enough because we're not one of the 4 teams left playing on conference championship weekend. And you think about how hard Ben Johnson works and how much he invests into trying to make this football team a championship contender. And he can stare at himself in the mirror and say, obviously it wasn't enough. You realize, oh God, like the work that's left to go even 2 more flights up the mountain is absurd. And there's an exertion and an endurance and a psychological stamina to that you don't know if these Bears have it. You just don't. You don't know if they're going to be able to put forth that same surge of work and investment and energy and collective belief and unity and all the things that went into the season to come anywhere close to repeating this season. And so it's a crazy, crazy topic to wrap your brain around it. I do, as I said at the outset, I think the Bears' ability to acknowledge this in the hours after their season ended is important, right? Because it's going to take that buy-in as soon as possible to start putting in the work in, to start acknowledging the deficiencies, to start working on them to get back here. You talked about the quarterbacks that aren't left playing. Patrick Mahomes out of the playoffs this year. My son's birthday is coming up. His birthday is always on conference championship weekend. He's going to be a teenager this coming weekend, Kevin. The last time that he walked into his birthday party with Patrick Mahomes not playing in the AFC championship game, he was 5 years old, right? Like, wow. And so that's a team that like figured it out, right? And so like that's the hope and that's the dream and that's the grand goal of like, can we do that? But very few teams do that, you know? And so you've got to understand what all goes into that, the luck, the work, the exertion, all of that. The sustainability question brings us to a little bit of a soundbite from Kevin Byard, who was asked on Monday about what does carry this team forward, what can push forward as a little bit of a tailwind into 2026. Here's what Kevin Byard had to say.
Man, I would just say just the resiliency of the season this year. I mean, we had so many magical wins this year, you know, come from behind victories, rather if it's, you know, the Cincinnati game, the Green Bay wins, Minnesota. I mean, it's countless amount of games. But, you know, it was special. And I think the city felt that. It was a special year. Just appreciative of the guys. You know, everybody came in, worked their behinds off. I mean, we had guys coming back from injuries, core muscle surgery, coming back, not being 100%, fighting for the guys. So I think everybody recognized how special this was. And, you know, it just kind of sucks we're not able to be able to have, you know, a Monday morning victory Monday and not be able to continue to play. But,
how much credit does Ben deserve for that, for changing that culture in here?
No, a ton of credit. Obviously, he's the man in charge, and I think I've said this from day one. Chicago, the Bears, they got the right guy leading this team. He did a phenomenal job this year. Like I said, I think we all kind of knew when Ben came in as the head coach about his offensive play calling and how good the offense was going to be. But I think just the accountability tone that was set from day one with, you know, the tough training camp that we had. And, you know, I think he just did a phenomenal job this year.
So, Kev, I started to make a list Monday evening of the things that I think can carry forward. And it's from some of these players. You heard Kevin mention some of that, the accountability, the attention to detail, the physicality, their resilience, their grit, the late game confidence. These are things that should provide a little momentum. And then you take it a little bit wider lens and you realize how many guys in that locker room believe in the head coach, in the quarterback, and then really kind of the sturdiness of that offensive line and what they established there. And you go, okay, there are some core things here that give the Bears a chance to have a chance. And so when we acknowledge the reality of the NFL and how difficult it is, it's not to say, oh, the Bears are going to come crashing down to earth in 2026, because I do think there are some real foundational pieces here that give you confidence that they've got a chance to hit a springboard and continue doing what they're doing. But man, like there's just a lot of the formula that needs to come together.
How many times, Dan, have we entered an offseason and thought, all right, well, this quarterback now is going to have to learn a new playbook, right? Or this playbook now needs a new quarterback.
Yeah.
You know, so coach quarterback staying together is just such an important thing that this team has in it. Look around the league. I mean, it seems like half the teams in the league are going to have either a new coach or a new quarterback next season. Yeah. Right? There were 9 head coaching openings.
It's crazy.
You know, you're going to have some.
Did that get to 10? I lost track, and this is weird because usually we're right on top of coaching searches. Did it get to 10? Or was McDermott the ninth?
I think McDermott was 9.
Okay.
And the other thing too, about you talk about sustainability. The Bears are in a much different part of this journey than, say, the Buffalo Bills are. And what I mean by that is like the Bears are at the beginning
Yeah.
right now. So not to say there's a massive room for error. You have some big financial questions after next season, obviously with the quarterback and other things that are going to make things challenging. But you have this kind of blank canvas in a sense that like you just had this great year and it was year one.
Right.
As opposed to some of these other coaches, I don't know if you saw that stat that somebody floated out there. It was after McDermott got fired, where it was coaches, what season it was with their team when they won a Super Bowl.
Sure.
And most of them are in the first 5
Few years. Yeah.
3, 4, 5. So like, that's what you could understand maybe why some of these teams move down from these long tenured coaches. Cause like, well, if it's not going to happen at all, or if it hasn't happened in a decade, it's just, the law of averages is not going to happen. And the Bears are right there at the beginning. And I'm going to have a story out next week too. It's just, you and I keep talking about how unfamiliar territory this is. The Bears right now have every offensive player under contract, starter for next year. Now, Ozzie Trapillo is going to be a massive question mark. That's going to be a huge storyline all spring and summer. But you even want to go beneath that. They got Theo Benedict under contract. They've got Luke Newman under contract. They've got, they could, if they don't think Trapillo is going to be ready for week 1, they have options there in terms of going out to get somebody. But to have at least 4 of your starting offensive linemen back, your quarterback, his receivers, his tight ends, his running backs, his play caller.
Yeah.
Like that is, you talk about sustainability, just you have the continuity there that other Bears teams just haven't been able to say they have to move forward. And, we'll spend the next 2 months spending a lot of time talking about Kevin Byard and Jaquan Brisker and what their Bears are going to do at that position. And then we'll get in April and look at the pass rush and how they add to it. But I think that having coach quarterback and then quarterback center and quarterback all-pro guard and quarterback star rookie tight end, like all of those connections get to just stay in the same playbook. And it's hard to do that in the NFL.
Yeah, and it gives them a chance to have a chance. We got one more piece of sound that we want to hear from one of the most significant voices in the building. But as you said there, I think it's notable that the blank canvas that you kind of referenced, the Bears don't have the strain yet of being like, why haven't you won at the highest level yet, right? Like that's not going to stalk them around the way it's stalked around Baltimore, the way it's stalked around Buffalo, and Pittsburgh and all of those things. And so that should work in their favor as well. Caleb Williams did talk on Monday. You were front and center for that. Here's a little bit of what Caleb had to say about the sustainability piece and what he took out of this season.
You get into these games, you get into and you win a bunch of games, you get into these games, playoff games, and you're winning, and you play these good teams, and you see what you have to go against. You see what championship level is. You see what you need to do to be at the position that you want to be at the end of the year, and so. You see what you have to do, you figure it out, and when you get knocked down, you get back up. And so, that's what we're going to do. That's my mindset. And so, we never stay down as a team. I think we've shown that this year. We never stay down. We keep fighting. And so, bringing that mentality into next year, and then finding ways to bring that hunger, for all 4 quarters in every single game. Is going to be important and something that we'll focus on throughout the off season and throughout next year.
Yeah, I know it's early, but just thinking ahead, what do you think needs to be done so that you guys can sustain this next year? Cole talked about how much tougher it's going to be, obviously, but what are some of the things you guys can do to sustain the success you had this year going up?
Yeah, I think some of it is I think it always comes down to the basics. Making sure we do the basics the best that we can as a team. Our focus level being at the highest level every single moment that we can, and that starts with the players. It starts with the coaches. Being able to make sure that that is the focus every single week, and so and that starts in off season. That starts in OTAs and training camp, and so you don't win championships. at this moment, you win championships and OTAs and training camp and things like that. And so, we'll figure it out. We'll come back together as a collective and find a way to go get back in the playoffs, back in the run, because that's where you ultimately want to be every single year.
Caleb there, Kevin, is speaking with, I think, the appropriate urgency, the appropriate purpose. Now he's got to follow that with purpose and urgency in his actions. He's got to bring 52 other guys along with him, probably 89 other guys, because training camp will be a part of this, with the purpose and urgency to it. I think there's a wonderful acknowledgement of what they face here. There's also an investment that needs to be made. They seem aware of that. They seem equipped to put that in. We'll see. And then along with that, I do think when Key talks about we see what a championship level looks like, these big games that they played from the middle of November through this past weekend, I think are such a huge, valuable experience for this team to have experienced that. And so, like, you can't bring those results forward to 2026, but you can take kind of the collective experience from that. And I think that's going to be a huge deal for this team, because they're not going to have to be, surprised by any of it next year when everybody's coming after them for the first time.
To that point, Dan, I know it's going to be a very common topic about regression and what things will regress and to the mean. And the easy thing people think about, well, they're not going to win all these games in the final seconds the way they did.
Sure.
You can't replicate that. My counter to that is they lost to the 49ers in the final play. They lost to the Packers and Lambeau in the final play. They lost the playoff game on the final play. They lost to the Vikings in week 1 in the final play. They lost to the Lions in the season finale on the final play. Like, they also lost a few games in those final seconds. The learning experiences for them. It's not like they won every game. So takeaways, those will come down, but you could sit there and be like, well, if you bring in the right reinforcements, your sack numbers should go up. I'm going real glass half full here.
No,
but I think that, like, you could sit there and say, okay, well, Caleb, how about this? The offensive line is not going to start all those games again. That was just absurd. Fair. Yeah. I would also counter that Rome Odunze is going to put up better numbers. I would, if DJ Moore's here, I think DJ Moore might put up better numbers next year. So I think there's just and
you're hopeful that TJ Edwards and Jalen Johnson and Kyler Gordon don't miss 50 games or whatever their combined total was this year.
Kyler Gordon played in 3 games all year. And I am going to go out on a limb here. You ready for this?
I'm ready.
I think Caleb Williams could get up to 60%.
Okay.
And I say that a little tongue in cheek because I think it could even higher than that. But I bring that up again. You talk about regress to the mean, everything comes back to mean. Well, I think he could regress to the mean and not complete only 58% of his passes.
Sure.
And that is something that's going to be a massive point of emphasis for him, for them. And yeah, there were some throwaways in there so that you can really, if you really want to dissect it, but we all watched it. It was not that is something that needs to improve. And I think it will improve. It's just going to be natural for that number to come up. So I think there's a lot of reasons for hope, for excitement. As you said, the fourth quarter stuff, you can't take away. Like I said this for the last 12 weeks of the season, when they're in the huddle and it's 4th and 4 and the playoff game's on the line, nobody in that huddle batted an eye because they've been there so many times, and you can't quantify that, but I think you can't take that away. I mean, you and I have talked to enough athletes and coaches who swear by that stuff, that knowing in the moment that you can do it, that stuff matters. So there's a lot of things that they built this year. And I know we make a lot of comparisons to 2018 Bears. Dan, I'll wrap up this point. There's a lot of reasons 2019 didn't work out, but you look at 2018, like they didn't get to have this experience of winning all these close games. Like, they didn't have a whole lot of games.
Like they were dominating a lot that year.
In fact, like you could sit there and be like, they blew the opener to the Packers. They blew that game in New York and Miami, the overtime game. Like they had some tight games that they just totally whiffed on, leading all the way to the playoff game. And this team, that is something, check mark. Like they got that. Doesn't mean they're going to win every one. They didn't win every one this year. But that is something that those guys, I'm going to keep speaking into existence, Dan. Week 1, Thursday night, Bears at Seahawks, as the Seattle Seahawks get their Super Bowl rings, and it's fourth quarter, and that crowd's going crazy, and the Bears have the ball. Like they're not going to be phased.
You've been determined for weeks now of getting the Bears on that season opening game on Thursday night in September. We're a long way from that. This has been an incredible conversation, and I think it's layered. I think it's really nuanced. I think it's awesome to have this forum to sound it out, because this is going to be what follows us really for. I'm looking at my calendar, 6-7 months here before we get back to the nitty gritty of everything for 2026. So I appreciate you stopping by, sharing your wisdom, sharing your knowledge. For our audience, Ryan Poles and Ben Johnson are expected to meet with reporters on Wednesday at Haugh to kind of tie a bow on that portion of things. We'll see what we learn there and come back with more intelligence and insight from there. But this has been a great discussion, Kev. Thanks for stopping by.
Thank you for having me, Dan.
That's Kevin Fishbain. For our stud producer, Adam Studzinski on Take the North podcast, I am Dan Wiederer. Thank you all for stopping by. Thank you for continuing to listen to our Bears chatter. Great talk. We'll see you out there.